Hello and welcome to Fire of Learning. I'm Justin, and today we're going to be discussing the political compass. There are many charts and graphs used to help plot political orientation, but the political compass, a system which plots your position on a Cartesian coordinate plane, is becoming more and more popular, so we're going to be talking about how it works and what it represents. Quick note before we get started. I understand politics is always a sensitive topic, and right now political tension may be very high, so, as always, I'm going to be as impersonal about this as possible and not press my own opinions in any way or form. Basically, if you have no idea at all where I am on the spectrum by the end of the video, then I've done my job correctly. Alright, so, as I said, there are many charts people have made to try to organize political orientations over the years. Some are more basic, some are more complex. The political compass seems to have become popular because it's complex enough to give appreciable detail and accuracy, but isn't so complex that it's esoteric. The exact creators are unknown, but its origins lie on www.politicalcompass.org, and the website also offers a test to help individuals place themselves on the coordinate plane. The test has been criticized as being too limited and having a left-wing bias. Whether or not that's true is your opinion. But regardless of whether or not that's true, the compass itself has expanded beyond the website into mainstream use, especially on the internet. Here's how it works. The y-axis, or the up and down, has to deal with the authority of the government, whether you prefer a hands-on government, authoritarianism, or a hands-off government, libertarianism. On the very bottom, you have variants of anarchism, and on the top you have variants of totalitarianism. People who score on the top half tend to believe that a strong government is ideal and necessary to a well-functioning society. The higher up you go, the more decisions you would entrust the government with. People who score in the upper quadrants are more likely to believe that the government may not always be right or perfect, but placing major decisions in the hands of informed and confident leaders is what's best for everyone. They are more likely to adhere to philosophy which supports the social contract, a contract which proponents argue is signed by everyone at birth. The argument made is that the state grants people rights, freedoms, opportunities, and other benefits and accomplishments of civilized society and protects them. In exchange, people agree to be loyal to the country and adhere to the country's laws and customs. Regarding specific issues, the ideologies at the top tend to favor centralized governments, strong militaries and police forces, government intervention in the economy, generally more government programs, and support more laws intended to keep people safe. As can probably be inferred, ideologies at the very top tend to suggest that society is best when the state is making all the major decisions. People who score on the bottom half tend to believe that personal liberty and small government are ideal and necessary to a well-functioning society. The lower you go, the more decisions you would entrust common people with. People who score in the lower quadrants are more likely to believe that though people are not always right or perfect, their personal freedom is of the highest importance and that everyone taking personal responsibility for their decisions and making decisions that affect everyone democratically is what's best for everyone. They are more likely to adhere to philosophy which supports free association, believing that the state is not what grants rights, freedoms, opportunities, and other benefits and accomplishments of civilized society, but that these rights are given to everyone by birth and that the job of the state is to merely do the bare minimum to protect people's freedom. Regarding specific issues, ideologies at the bottom tend to favor an economy that runs itself naturally, a small military, possibly even relying on militias, and believe that society should have as few laws as possible. As can probably be inferred, ideologies at the very bottom tend to suggest that government is altogether unnecessary and propose a variety of methods for how society could exist and function normally without the state. Around the middle of the two, people tend to believe in a strong government which is subservient to the will of the people and probably elected democratically. Now the x-axis, or the left and the right. This is intended to deal with economic position, and it's a little bit less straightforward than the y-axis because economics is actually somewhat often misrepresented as a black and white subject when it is in fact very diverse and sometimes very complicated. Essentially, the farther left you go, the more you desire the economy to be run cooperatively. The farther right you go, the more you desire for the economy to be run competitively. Basically, on the right you have free market economies and variants of capitalism. On the left you have collectivist economies and variants of socialism. On the very far right you have complete free market capitalism. On the very far left you have complete communism. People who score on the left tend to be more aligned with the various philosophies of socialism, and it is more appropriate to refer to leftists as socialists than communists, because communism and socialism are not necessarily the same thing, but more precisely, communism is a kind of socialism, and socialism is an umbrella term for multiple economic ideologies, which are all intended to give the working class control of what are called the means of production. The means of production refers basically to the resources that a given society or community or whatever has and its ability to use those resources to create products. Left scorers tend to believe that the economy should be specifically set up to favor the majority of people and offer a few suggestions on how this should be done. Who is responsible for organizing depends on where scorers fit on the y-axis, which I'll get to in a moment, but the intention is, roughly, for the working class to benefit from its labor as a group. Left scorers have higher tendencies of believing that economic burdens are something which can be overcome if the economy of a nation is revised from what they see as a hierarchical top-down to a horizontal equality, allowing people to focus on more rewarding and fulfilling enterprises and creating what they see as an ideal society. Typically, left scorers tend to believe that you only own what you're actually using. Now, this doesn't mean necessarily that you're expected to be stripped down to the bare minimum, but owning, for example, a few acres of land or especially a store that you've never even been to would definitely be frowned upon by leftists. In standard communist theory, for example, the jobs and resources of a given group are divided equally among the workers, or, in other words, promote the phrase, from each according to ability to each according to need. Following this philosophy, if an area of land rich in iron were discovered, the iron belongs to everyone in the community. Everyone shares the burden of extracting it, either voluntarily or out of obligation to the state, depending on your y-axis again, and everyone has an equal right to take what they need from the products. Right scorers tend to believe that the economy should be set up to favor more unregulated exchange between people of a given group. There are, again, a few suggestions on how this is to be done, and exactly what is meant by unregulated is very dependent on where scorers fit on the y-axis, but the intention is, roughly, to have the economy driven by free exchange and competition. Right scorers have higher tendencies of believing that competition and free exchange lead to better products and much more efficient allocation of resources. Property rights covered by capitalism, which basically state that what you own is what you own with reference to the specific details of how a given society works, allow people to profit from resources that they own, which they believe causes higher rates of innovation and distribution. The top-down hierarchy of capitalism, they tend to believe, is not necessarily structured on privilege, but opportunity and hard work. The opportunity to climb the economic ladder causes people to work harder, and harder work creates, as I said, in their opinion, a better workforce, better products, and better allocation of resources, which creates an ideal society. In standard capitalist theory, for example, an individual may own an area of land rich in iron. The iron belongs to that individual, but so do the burdens of extracting it. The individual will typically exchange something, usually nowadays currency, for mining equipment and payment for the miners that he or she will hire to extract it, and then with the extracted iron, will typically sell it on the market in exchange for other things, again, nowadays currency. It's not all so straightforward as that, however. In the middle of the two, for example, ideologies exist such as mutualism, in which workers own the means of production collectively, but goods are still exchanged on the free market. There are very important differences between the four sides which have been created here. Typically, they are referred to as the authoritarian left, the authoritarian right, the libertarian left, and the libertarian right. Each has a significantly different perspective on how the world works. The left will criticize the right for bread molding on grocery stores while they are hungry outside. The right will criticize the left for conditions which create breadlines and hunger. The bottom will criticize the top for being controlling and invasive. The top will criticize the bottom for being inefficient and scattered. Within the spectrum are all sorts of answers to all sorts of problems. There are not always clear or easy answers to the problems of the world, which has led to the political diversity that we see here. Now, having settled all of that, I think the best way to navigate the compass is to position relatively well understood politics on it. With a large portion of my viewers being American, we'll use American politics for now. The two main parties of the United States are the Democrats and the Republicans, also known as the Liberals and the Conservatives. Based off of other charts and such things, we'll put the Liberals here and the Conservatives here for the averages. They are, as you can see, relatively close, but significantly distanced in the same quadrant. To elaborate, they both typically believe in a decent amount of government, it's just they hold different expectations for what the government is and isn't allowed to interfere with. An obvious example is the economy, which explains the gap in right to left. With reference to the entire chart here, one could easily call both liberals and conservatives capitalists, but liberals tend to favor more government programs and intervention and things of that nature. These two parties only represent about half the nation actually, however. Many Americans identify as independents or unaffiliated with either party. For the majority of those people, however, this means they swing between issues placed on the party averages here. Based off of that, one could infer that probably over 3/4 of Americans fit within this red box here. There are also some prominent third parties in the United States. The two main ones are the Libertarians and the Greens. We'll put the American Libertarian Party here and the Green Party here. The Libertarian Party is generally not comprised of extreme libertarians, so they don't quite fit into the bottom quadrant, but they border closely. The Greens are slightly less controlling than the liberals when it comes to government authority, but government authority is necessary to them, and they're usually much more focused on government programs and things of that nature to the point of bordering on mild socialism. A very substantial portion of the United States population fits into the authoritarian right quadrant, and interestingly, we can see that a miniature graph could be created within the top right quadrant. Let's plot some very relevant leaders on here from this election and last election to help clarify. Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Gary Johnson, Ron Paul, and Jill Stein. Again, as you can see, despite the differences between everyone here, they all basically fit within the top right quadrant. You may disagree with that claim, but because a huge portion of Americans are in the top right quadrant, they wouldn't be electable if they weren't as well. Now, a lot of graphs actually put, for example, Bernie Sanders and Jill Stein in the left quadrants. They'll put Ron Paul down towards anarcho-capitalism. They'll put Donald Trump right up next to Hitler. So if you're going to be looking at these charts online, be aware that exaggeration and bias are very common on them. Let's plot some other ideologies here to gain a better understanding of what's going on. Here we have the anarcho-socialists. Anarcho-socialists typically favor the destruction of the state and replacing it with horizontal collectives which vary in structure depending on specific ideology, but the main ideology here is anarcho-communism. Here you have the anarcho-capitalist movements. You have here also a belief that the state is unnecessary. Anarcho-capitalists believe that people are able to live in society and maintain the capitalist free market without the need of a state. You have up here more Marxist thinking. One of the main Marxist ideologies is Marxism-Leninism, which we'll place here. Now, this can be a bit trickier because traditionally, Marxist-Leninists believe a strong worker state is necessary to overcome capitalism at first, but then gradually the government should back off as the workers become more anarchistic. Others believe on holding on to a strong state indefinitely, which is responsible for directing what they see as the liberation of the working class into socialist economics. Up here, also towards authoritarianism, we can place fascism. Fascism is typically about giving the reins to the state, but economically fascists can be more divided. Some are more socialist, some are more capitalist, so the average fits about here. To match famous recent world leaders and philosophers and such as this, we can add Hitler, Stalin, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Noam Chomsky, Milton Friedman, and Margaret Thatcher. I hope that this is giving you a good sense of how all this fits together, but there is a major problem with this chart. The chart is pretty much strictly looking at level of government authority and economic beliefs. It's not the greatest at looking at the intricacies of social philosophy and policy. Technically speaking, an individual who is very socially liberal, believes in gay marriage, feminism, is pro-choice, etc., but a strong authoritarian government and complete free market capitalism belongs here. Likewise, an individual who believes the anarcho-communist model of society is ideal, but is pro-life, anti-feminist, white nationalist, would fit around here, technically speaking. Person A would socially not identify with the far right, person B would socially not identify with the far left, but on this chart, they're matched, when outside of this chart, they're considered on different ends of the spectrum. So, this chart is not perfect. It's meant to be more general or introductory. To really understand political differences, you have to look at ideologies individually. For more videos like this and videos on many other subjects, be sure to check out Fire of Learning and subscribe. Thank you for watching. By the way, Fire of Learning is on Facebook and now Instagram. Links to both are in the description. I plan to use social media to post things that I wouldn't really dedicate a whole video to, such as interesting facts and information or relevant updates to the channel. I've had a page for the channel on Facebook for a while now, and I'll be honest, I hate the Facebook page setup. You go on your page and you're suddenly spammed with all these insights and tips on how to function the page, and just owning a page on there has definitely gotten worse over the years. But I will definitely try to use that in Instagram from now on. So thank you again for watching.